bkereviews.com.au. Today I'll be reviewing the BH Neo Carbon. Now just a special thanks to sydneyeBikes.com for giving us this Neo Carbon for a review and a bit of a test. Now the BH Neo Carbon is one of the top of the range BH Neo bikes. It's a race bike, so it's pretty light compared to most electric e-bikes that you see weighing well over 20 kilos, 25 kilos. The BH Neo Carbon comes in at 19 kilograms, so for an electric bike it is pretty light. Those sort of numbers you'll only see in those smaller, foldable bikes. The BH Neo Volt is one of those bikes, but to get a full-size bike that's an electric bike with the motor and the battery to come in at 19 kilos is a great feat in itself. Like most of the BH, or like all the BH Neo range, built on very high quality parts. Most of, if not all the parts on it are made of carbon where possible. Its tyres are 700cc, 1.25 inches. So the BH Neo Carbon is very similar in the sense that to the other bikes, that all the electronics are kept consistent throughout the BH Neo range. So the battery and the locking mechanism of the battery, the LCD screen, anything that changes between the LCD with models on the BH line or the BH Neo lineup is the color of the LCD, but essentially they're all the same. It is a very high quality bike, hydraulic disc brakes. The gearing is set up also for a road bike. There is no suspension as well. As most road bikes, there is no suspension, so it is a bit tough if you're planning to take it onto cycle paths and places where the road's not going to be flat. It is very light. And I really do want to show you just how light this bike is for an electric bike, just by easily picking it up with one hand. Now there's not many bikes you can actually do that with. Unfortunately, I don't have enough muscle power to put it in over my head, but there's no way I could be doing that with the BH Neo Jumper or some other bikes that I've ridden that are electric. So because it's very light, you're going to get that quick punch acceleration right off the mark. You're going to get easier driven power through those pedals, so you'll be able to reach speeds that are much higher than some of the other BH Neo bikes. I own the BH Neo Jumper, and I found the BH Neo Carbon to be just that, so much more nimble, that much faster, and it was just so light to move around for an electric bike. Everything is properly concealed on the BH Neo bike, so the battery's been integrated well. My comment on the locking mechanism for the BH Neo range is that it's pretty much a turn of the key and a rod will stick out of the part that you'll see now in the frame, and that locks into the battery. My issue with that is people that forget to lock their bike because there's no real locking indication might ride off with their BH Neo bike, go over a bump, and that battery pop out, it'll dislodge, it can break, it can damage. So we would like to see something spring-loaded there. Hydraulic brakes, I was easily stopping, in seconds from doing 30 kilometers an hour. Not all the BH Neo bikes have hydraulic disc brakes. You've got the city and the street that don't really require it because they're more of a comfort style and they're not made for that fast acceleration and fast top speed. But like the BH Neo range, I found that the assistance did slowly taper off at about 30 kilometers. So you have to keep that in mind, because a lot of people that have your traditional road bikes, they do average 30 kilometers, but they can also push themselves to 40 and 50 kilometers an hour. So anything over 30 kilometers, and it does really become up to you to get that further pushing speed. Now the BH Neo Carbon is a race bike. What does that mean for you? Are you going to be using this in fire trails? Of course not, because it's not set up for that. It has absolutely no suspension. So going over any bumps, you're really going to feel that impact. But what it does have is lightness, thin wheels, which gives you speed, a good acceleration. You'll find that assistance slowly tapers off once you hit about 30 k's. What that means is anything beyond that, you really have to start pedaling yourself because the motor won't be assisting you at all. I did test the bike in terms of what speed I could get on a flat, and you could see that now. find that across the whole BH Neo range that the pedals are the same. What I find is that they're one-sided pedals, which means that your foot can only be on one side. For me, that's a big annoyance because at traffic lights, when you take your foot off the pedal, you'll find that when you come to put your foot back on the pedal, that you'll be flicking it to try and get your foot on the right side. For me, that was a great annoyance, and one of the first things I did on my BH Neo jumper was change those pedals. So that's something to think about. So I find that the gearing is really set up for a road bike. It's still a 30 speed like the BH Neo jumper, however, it's more suited to be on the road. I found no problems with the gears. I do like keeping the granny gears on there just in case the battery does die and I have some hills to conquer. Some people might find that, hey, I'm already on the last gear and I find I need more gears. For them, yeah, you can look at changing the gearing set to really suit your requirements if need be. The position as well is really set up so you find yourself leaning more forward. What does that mean for you? It means that you're not just getting a bike that BH put together and just threw the same parts on all the different bikes. They really did try to make this bike specifically intended for its purposes. A light frame, it's very nimble, it's very fast. I find the handlebars very comfortable as well. I was riding for 3-4 hours, no gloves, and I found that I had no problems with my palms, feeling any pain or anything wrong with my wrists. So they actually are quite good handlebars. Now for those people that are used to traditional road bikes and they can get up to 40 to 50 kilometers on a straight pedaling quite hard, this does become a little bit tough because you're on your own and you do have that extra weight. It is quite hard to reach 40 kilometers an hour on the flat. However, you do have that assistance to push you all the way up until 30 kilometers and save your energy. Now the gear shifting is quite nice in the sense that it's quite smooth. Obviously you don't want to be pedaling as you're shifting gears. So when you're not pedaling, you've got no motor assistance. That's the other thing I want to mention. There is no throttle on this bike. What does that mean for you? The torque sensor is great in the sense that if it feels any pressure on your pedals, it's going to give you that push. If you're at traffic lights, you don't have to worry. For me, I was coming from a bike that did have throttle, so that was a big concern. However, the torque sensor is that good that it really won't be much of a problem. However, there is one instance where you will have problems. If you're in a very high gear and you find yourself that you forgot to shift down and you've stopped at the lights and it's a steep hill that you're about to tackle, you might find yourself stacking it, and that's what happens. You do have to remember that, hey, I'm approaching a steep hill, I'm coming to a set of traffic lights, I got to shift down because the torque sensor is good and the motor's good, but it's not that good. That's the only situation where you might need throttle. Otherwise, putting the assistance level on boost was sufficient. The electronics in the BH Neo range are all the same. The batteries are the same, the LCD controller is the same. I did weigh the battery in the BH Neo Carbon and it was 2.75 kilograms, the exact same weight as the one in the BH Neo Jumper. I did want to expect that they did something extra special for the $3,700 recommended retail price of this bike to make the battery that little bit lighter. It's still a 9 amp hour battery. They claim up to 90 kilometers. That's with no headwind on a completely flat surface using Eco. I found that I got about 40 kilometers using Eco most of the way. I really enjoyed the crankset of the BH Neo Carbon. On the BH Neo Jumper, I did get some clicking, and that was easily fixed up by correctly tightening some of the bolts. With the BH Neo Carbon, I had none of that. It was really set up quite nice. Now the BH Neo Carbon, at the time of shooting this video, has a recommended retail price of about $3,700. Now, some of you might think, hey, that's a lot of money, but you really have to look at what you get with the bike. Most of the components are carbon. It is a complete rigid frame, so you don't get front suspension or rear suspension, but it's not designed for that. That was never its purpose. Its purpose was to be driven on the road, driven on flat paths. It's a really light bike for it. You can get a well-integrated battery. You can't see any wires because they're running down the tube or inside the tube of the battery. And it's a great looking bike. The matte black finish is a stunning looking finish, and I really do wish that they incorporated that finish in the BH Neo Jumper, or at least made it an option in the Extreme, or any of their other bikes. You might be thinking, is it worth it? If this is the type of bike you're after, if you want lightness, if you want a well integrated and designed bike, at the time of shooting this video, there's nothing else that is offered in the same level and category as this bike. One thing I'd like to quickly talk about is the brake regeneration that's claimed on the BH Neo website. The bike doesn't actually have any brake regeneration, and you know this that when you apply the brakes, even though a symbol does come up on the LCD screen, you can't feel any drag off the rear of the bike. That's the biggest giveaway. The other giveaway is that it's a geared motor. The BH Neo Carbon, at the time of shooting these videos, a $3,700 bike. What do you get for that money? You get a well-integrated battery, it's a very well-designed bike, you get quality components on the bike. Overall, I think it's a great bike, and I think it has a lot to offer.